Hello, welcome to. I got an echo. Hold on. There we go. Got rid of the echo. Hello and welcome to the Power Lunch Live podcast, at which we do not eat lunch, and it is not technically a podcast, but it's still awesome, and there's definitely power, and that's the important part. So for those of you who are new, we meet every week on Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, which for some of us is about to get messy because some of the time zones are going to change this weekend and some of them are not. So good luck finding us. Just kind of log in and you'll find us. Get the reminders. So we're here every week. Every week I bring together as many as 4 awesome people to share some awesome and clever things. If you think that you should be part of this show, you can go to the link that's scrolling along on the bottom and apply to be part of the show. And what I love about this is I bring it together with the power of serendipity. So if you're like, what's the theme of this show? The theme is that we have awesome people, all 4 of them. Excellent. That we have awesome people sharing awesome things in different fields. So each of our guests has brought a topic that they would like to share. We may get to one of them. We may get to all of them. We may get to 2 or 3 of them. Who knows? Serendipity is our producer. But we always have a good time and learn a lot of stuff. A little bit about me, because I'm the host. I can actually introduce myself and keep forgetting to do that. So that's your coaching moment. If you host a show, make sure people know who you are. I'm Michael Whitehouse. I'm the guy who knows a guy. My main business, I'm a networking concierge, so people hire me to introduce them to people they need to know. That might be you, in which case, contact me. My email address is right here. Yes, I fixed my background, so my email address is actually above my name, not behind my name. That's another tip. Make sure your background is not occluded by whatever markers the software puts over it. I also have a daily motivational podcast you can find at morningmotivation.fun. So every morning you can have my thrilling voice and some even better music getting you inspired and motivated to start your day. And I recently discovered that if you have a Google Home device, you can say, "Okay, Google, play Morning Motivation by Michael Whitehouse on Google Podcasts." Apparently you do need all those words, because you just say play morning motivation, you get like something in Spanish. I don't know what that was, but if you say all the words, you'll get it. And you can even set it with Google Assistant to be your alarm in the morning. So it can wake you up with the Morning Motivation Podcast. All right, enough about me. Let's talk about some of these great people. So we're going to go around the room, do quick introductions, and then our first topic leader will be Lynn. Who will be teaching us about judgments and myths we have about being persuasive. That's called a teaser. All right. So, Julie, starting with you, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So thanks for having me here today, Michael. So my name is Julie. I'm with Revent Consulting. We are a hybrid and virtual event planning company. So we help our clients execute excellent and fun virtual and hybrid events worldwide. Keeps us
Excellent.
busy.
Nothing like having a professional in the field on my semi-professional show. How are we doing so far?
You're doing great.
Awesome. All right. You heard it here. Professional says we're doing great. Lynn, tell us about yourself.
So Lynne Franklin, it says neuroscience nerd. What that means is that I study all the boring brain research, and then I figure out how to take that from the scientific world and move it into the real world where you and I live, and create hacks and tips that you can use to better connect with people faster so that you can get to your goals quickly.
Ooh, neat. All right, definitely excited to hear more about that. Tom, welcome back to the show, your second time.
I know. Do I get like a special gift or something, or, flowers? Are you going to send me flowers?
The plaque you got last time will be twice as big this time.
Awesome. I'm with Epigraph, which is a brand innovation, design, and marketing studio. It sits at the convergence of those 4 circles. I'm a brand-led CMO who's worked with Global Fortune 50 all the way down to early stage startup. So basically, I geek out over the entire marketing funnel, if you're all about the marketing funnel. But I do my best work top of funnel, how to effectively help organizations position themselves to their audiences, tap into their values and effectively blue ocean strategy make themselves an N of one. If that makes them a little uncomfortable, we'll go pink ocean strategy where they're a little bit closer to where the action is. But I'm very familiar with disrupted and disruptive spaces, and it's a pleasure to be here chatting with all you fine individuals this Friday. Hello, Epigraph.com is my website.
All right. And Ellen.
Well, hello there. So I'm from Change the World Marketing. And what I do is I help people who have knowledge get it out to the world in one way or another online. So I help people create online products, online courses, online programs, and I help them figure out who their target market is, what the problem is they solve, create a message, grow a list, partner with other people, and then create and market their product.
Awesome. And as I said when we first met, that would have been really useful for me to find like a year ago. That's exactly what I needed a year ago. So some of you out there listening might be like, that's exactly what I need now because I'm where you were a year ago. So, figuring out how do you deliver that message is a huge thing. Like, yeah, make your course and then sell it through this strategy. What course? How do I make that? So we're so glad to have you here. And so for our first topic, we have Lynn, who will be talking about judgments and myths we have about being persuasive. So take about a couple minutes. I know that you said you gave a talk recently on being concise, so I've no worry that you will overtalk or overcomplicate. But take a couple minutes to get us started, and then we'll kick it around a bit in sort of an open conversation and go from there.
Okay, so thanks, Michael. Here's the truth. We all want to be more persuasive, but we have this fear about it. And I think if we could turn the fear into an image, it would be the mythical used car salesman, because we've all had that experience, haven't we? And I want you to think about that right now. The world's worst sales experience that you've ever had. And think about the qualities behind that person. And if you had to shout them out, chances are you'd be saying things like, manipulative or pushy or, false sense of short time frame in order to make the decision, or just slimy, all of these things. And so when you think about being persuasive, you think about this used car salesman, and this is not what you want to be. And so we try to soft sell, or we try to peddle things back, and we don't become persuasive because we have an incorrect definition of what being persuasive means. So here's my invitation to you. Shift how you define persuasion. And here's how I define it. You have a gift by virtue of your background, your education, your life experience. Even if you're sitting in a room filled with people who do exactly what you do it in different ways. So you have this gift to give the world. And the scoop is, it becomes then your responsibility to share your gift in a way that people can see it, hear it, and feel it. And then make a good decision about whether or not what you're proposing is the right thing for them. So you're trying to get your ideas heard and understood, as opposed to getting everybody in the world to say yes to you, which is what that slimy used car salesman is trying to do. That's not you. So you present your ideas in a way that they connect with people who then make that good decision. And sometimes the decision is, yes, the one that we want to hear. Yes, I want to do what you're proposing. But there are other times, and when they happen, don't you, that this person should not say yes to you. This is not the right situation for you to be working with that person. And so in those instances, you want them to say no quickly, so they get out of your sphere and create more energy and more space for the people who should say yes to you. So persuasion is not about manipulation or controlling or tricking people into doing anything. It's about you presenting your gift in a world so that people you're speaking with can understand it and know whether or not it's right for them. So give up those judgments about being persuasive. Present your gift. Thanks, Michael.
I love that concept. And I was a car salesman for some time and tried not to be that guy, certainly. And it's, a couple of you I did mute because there was some background noise. So I think you can unmute yourselves if you want to pipe in. just in case you try to talk, you're like, why can't anyone hear me? So anyway, I did try to, try not to be that guy, and actually found it to be fairly effective, because when the competitors are that guy, then I could really comfortably be like, oh no, sure, go check out the Honda, go to the place down the street. And I swear people come crawling back into the dealership like, please just sell me a car. I thought they'd all be nice like you, and they're not. Just make this end. Because they, because I wasn't pushing them, I let them go. But I think a lot of people are misserved by the being taught transactional sales. So if the selling you've done is cars or Mary Kay or whatever, Mary Kay's more relationship based, but like, cars or whatever, then you make a sale, they're done, they're out, and you never see them again. And so you're taught to do whatever it takes to get them to sign on the line that is dotted and get out of here. Whereas like my business, it begins when I sell them. Then I got to work with them. So I'm really picky about who I work with, because I'm thinking like, is this the person I want to be thinking about every time I do a one-to-one 25 times a week? Because that's what my business is. So I've turned down far more people for my program than I've let into it. I think that's a good mindset.
Yeah, I call it catch and release.
Mm-hmm.
There are just some people, because we've all had that experience where we thought, really shouldn't work with this person. And then we did anyway, for whatever reason we needed to in that moment. And we realized, yep, made a mistake there. It never turns out well.
Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, no, I was right. I was right the first time.
I found values to be a really nice filter. As the son of an executive coach who really always espoused values, leading with those and putting them out into the world, whether that's through a LinkedIn profile or just early in the conversation, I've found that to be a nice way to draw those to you with whom you're aligned and would love to work together, and maybe push away those who you realize 6 months down the road maybe we're not made to be working with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those values, speaking of values, one of those things that I do with the executive communication coaching I do, and that is, guess what? People will tell you all day long what it is they really need. We just need to listen. And there are two different types of listening. There's listening to respond, which is what most of us do. We're listening to what somebody's saying and then figuring out, all right, so now that I know this, I'm going to say this. But the better kind of listening is called listening for understanding and empathy. So it's not just what they're saying, it's their body language, it's their voice tone and quality. It's all of these things which give us the information that we need. And because I'm a neuroscience nerd, I know the research shows that the more you listen, the more interesting everybody else thinks you are.
Yep, and then that goes back to How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a great story about that exact topic. So yeah, listening is definitely a very powerful thing. And then you know how to say the right things to engage with, as one of you just said. Clearly doing the listening thing really well. As one of you just said, that people will tell you how they want to be sold. Mm-hmm. Everything you notice to sell them, if they are a fit, they're going to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the other beautiful thing about that is that once people listen, once you listen well to people, what ends up happening is it's another neuroscience thing, the rule of reciprocity. Because you've listened well, sooner or later, somebody's going to notice how well you've listened. And then they'll say, hey, I want to know more about what you do. And they will actually be interested in what you have to say. So model the behavior first. And usually it's a karmic thing. It comes back around.
Yeah, Tom, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just listening to Dr. Andrew Huberman on the Rich Roll podcast earlier this week. Really interesting, out of Stanford. They have a whole neuroscience school that's doing some really interesting research on sort of, breaking addictions, breaking habits, sort of looking at performance and optimization through the lens of neurology and neurobiology. Just amazing stuff. So very, very cool that you're playing in that space, Lynn.
I got lucky because it was literally about 10 years ago. I thought, I want to be a better version of me. And if I could do that on my own, I would have done it by now. So I started looking at personal development programs, and most of them were think happy thoughts and good things will happen to you. And I get the whole mindset deal, but sitting and smiling at my phone will not necessarily make it ring with my next client. And so I came across a program that had a neuroscience component. And I thought, if there's a reason to do something one way versus another because of how my brain works, I could get behind that. And then luckily for me, the whole field exploded. And there's all of this wonderful research out there. And that's what I love doing. I geek out on reading the research and then figuring out, what does this mean in the real world? How can we use it to better connect with other people?
What I think is a great point about the happy thought. And by the way, everyone feel free to just jump in. You don't need to raise your hand or anything. It's like a lunch. You're just jumping in the conversation. But I like you said about the, think happy thoughts, because there's, causation versus correlation. Certainly the people who are sitting there thinking happy thoughts are more successful, because when you're successful, you tend to think more happy thoughts. But, you didn't just say, oh, I'm thinking happy things. Other things happen. There were mindset shifts, and there were philosophy shifts, and other things happened, the result of which is that you're thinking happy thoughts. But you don't start there. You end there. It's kind of like, to be in shape, you need to have well-defined muscles. No, if you're in shape, you will get muscle definition. Muscle definition does not make you be in shape. So, carving your muscles isn't going to put you in better shape. It's just going to make you weird and bruised looking.
Yeah, the research is really kind of disappointing in this area. And that is 90% of the thoughts that you have every day are recurring thoughts. Excuse me, 80% of those are recurring thoughts. 90% of those recurring thoughts are negative. So we say nasty things to ourselves that we would never say to anybody else in the world. So being mindful of your thoughts. And you're right, Michael, pick the happier thoughts, because if you're going to be repeating those thoughts, all the time, choose the better thoughts to repeat.
That's a staggering statistic that 80% of the things we think all day is negative. What trick do you use to keep yourself out of that 80% spiral?
Well, so the first thing is noticing when it's happening, because these thoughts are recurring. So you don't even notice when you've shifted into the negative. So paying attention. And for a lot of us, it is, how does your body feel in the moment? Are you feeling the swirling in the stomach? Are you feeling the tightness in your shoulders? So if you can't stop your thoughts, at least pay attention to your body. And then, and there are some people who, honest to goodness, set alarms, and, and the alarm goes off and they check what kind of things they're thinking in that moment. And, and it truly is all right, I'm thinking, geez, I'm going to go on this podcast and I'm really going to screw it up. And, and here's the really awful thing about this. So your subconscious mind wants you to get what you want, but you literally have to tell it. And so, if I told my subconscious mind, I'm going to do a great job on this podcast, I'm going to give people all kinds of wonderful information they can use right away to make their lives better, then it goes down into my subconscious mind, which then bubbles up ways for me to get there. But if before the podcast started, I thought, they're never going to pay any attention to anything I have to say, and this, and I'm going to do a really rotten job. Well, I guess that's exactly what your subconscious mind hears. So it wants you to get what you want, and it will find ways for you, in this instance, to shoot yourself in the foot on this podcast. So the whole idea is, yes, 80% of your thoughts are recurring and 90% of those are negative. Well, guess what? Choose the more positive ones, send that information down from your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which, once again, chews on it and finds ways for you to get what you want. So it literally becomes find ways, and you can find a million of them, figure out which one works for you, to check your thoughts. And then if they're negative, choose a more positive one and give your subconscious mind some good stuff to work on.
Yeah, it's like having an executive assistant who does whatever you tell them to do. Whatever you tell them to do.
Yeah, because your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a positive message and a negative message. It will get you whatever you're asking it to do.
I'm so stupid. Well, that's a weird instruction, but you got it, boss.
Yep.
That's what you want. You'll be stupid. You got it.
Yeah, I'll find another way to confirm that for you. Yeah, thanks very much.
Wouldn't want you wrong. So let's go on to Julie. So we've talked a bit about delivering a good message, but also important is having a platform for said good message, such as impactful virtual and hybrid events. So Julie, tell us a little bit about how to run events in this new digital world.
Sure. So, the virtual event space has changed dramatically. So I initially joined this space about 15 years ago, started my own company with my two partners 2.5 years ago, with really a focus of how you can do hybrid events where there's an in-person audience as well as a web audience that are coexisting and getting the same content. How do you make those fun and great and different? And then we've seen it all through the years. The last 2.5 years has definitely propelled the industry dramatically as the average consumer has now discovered virtual events. And now everybody is, thankfully, we're getting back in person. So they're discovering what hybrid is and how do you do good hybrid? Because there's a lot of really bad hybrid out there. I'm sure we've all been on our share of Zoom calls where they call it hybrid and somebody just placed a computer in the middle of the table. And that's hybrid. That's not hybrid, guys. That's just torturing the web audience. It's like, what is happening? Who's talking? I can't hear anything. So we have an approach where we look at hybrid events as a 2-track event. So you got your track 1, which is your in-person. That's where you're going to really take advantage of all the great things about in-person. You can eat food together. You could touch each other. You could hang out. All the great things about being in-person. And then you have track 2, which is your virtual audience, where we're really going to tap into what's great about being virtual. The fact that you don't have to travel, the fact that you can take in content at your convenience and your leisure, that you can meet people from all over the world, that it's at a click of a button, that if you want, you don't even have to put on pants. Those are the great things about attending a virtual event. And then we really create a 2-track system where each track, we're taking advantage of those pluses. And the only time that we're bringing them together is during that live feed, where at that point, we try to break the fourth wall as much as possible so that we bring in the web into the room and vice versa. So we try to meld them as much as possible so that specifically your web audience doesn't feel like they're just watching TV all alone by themselves at home and they're super bored. So there's various tricks. The simplest one is just to take questions from the web audience. It doesn't have to be verbal. It could be written. We like to turn on a little mic in the room. So when the people clap and laugh in the room, we're actually live picking up that audio so that if you're watching at home, it feels like you're sitting in that audience, like somebody is actually clapping and laughing right next to you. If you have a remote speaker, bringing them into the room, again, you're straddling those lines to keep everybody together. And the last tip is to still keep it short. So when you're full virtual, our biggest tip was keep it under an hour. That still applies for hybrid. Again, we're trying to take advantage of what's great about being in person. And what's great about being in person is not sitting in a ballroom together staring at a screen. It's about that moment of being able to network and be together and be able to just bump into somebody. That's what's great about being in person. So keep that live content super short for both audiences. And I think you're going to have a much better hybrid experience than the regular old computer on a table. So.
Yeah, that is much needed advice for many folks. So it is very good work. And even so, those virtual events, talking about these sitting in the room watching TV. I've seen some that are, a few bad ways they've done. One is the unengaging Zoom call where like one of the little boxes is the speaker somewhere. I think he's speaking.
Where is he? He's lost in the sea of little heads.
Yep. Yeah, I that or the more webinar type events where it's just like someone's talking and apparently there's other people watching this with you, but you can't actually engage with them. There's no chat. You can't see them. So yeah, I've seen it wrong a couple ways.
Yeah. Like you definitely don't want to leave your web audience feeling like they're alone on a ship in the ocean, stranded.
Yeah, I also hear people sometimes like Toastmasters groups talk about going hybrid. Like, oh yeah, let's go hybrid. Like, you don't just go hybrid. Thinking, Sean Bean there being like, one does not simply go hybrid.
It's so funny you mentioned that, Michael, because we were just talking about that in our Toastmasters meeting this morning. And I guess someone had dialed into a virtual group of some old school club chapter down in California or Florida. And they were doing hybrid, but it was more the people who tuned in from online were basically like pictures on the wall. And I think they charged like $50 a head because it was a very Tony all boys club type Toastmaster chapter. So I was picturing like Harry Potter, where, there's the photos on the wall of people and they're just like moving. Like the people online become window dressing at that point. It's a very odd experience, I would imagine, for all involved.
Yeah.
I just want to add another thing to the bad experiences: death by PowerPoint in terms of meetings. So.
I would agree.
It's true. Of course, when it was in person, one of the most awful things was the speaker who stands up and stares at the slide and reads it to you. It's like, just send me the frickin' slide deck and I'll read it on my own time. Thank you very much. If you're not going to add any value and I get to stare at the back of your head, I'd just rather not be there.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
No, keep PowerPoint to a minimum. They're a great tool. We always work with our clients. Like, they're a great tool. You want to keep it short, catchy, imagery. At no point should you have paragraphs on your PowerPoint presentation. Nobody's here to read. They're here to listen to you. So, those are some of the little tricks that you can do to just make your event just a little bit more engaging.
Well, and here, because you knew I'd get back to neuroscience anyway, the research indicates that every 7 minutes, it only takes 7 minutes for if you don't interact with them, every 7 minutes, their brains will take a vacation. And the jargon is, you need to create a state change every 7 minutes in presentations, in person or virtual. Every 7 minutes, you have to create a state change, meaning you ask your audience to do something. So it's either type in the chat or ask a question or raise their hands or clap or, even imagine something. So if you do that every 7 minutes at the least, you'll at least keep everybody in the room. Because otherwise, we've all sat through the presentations where people didn't engage us. And after 7 minutes, we all have a tendency to wander off.
It's very true. And to add to that fun stat, I never heard the 7 minutes before, but I love it. I'm stealing it. It's mine now. So the burnout, the virtual burnout, we're not going to blame that one platform because it happens on all platforms. That kicks in on average 37 minutes in. So there's a reason that we tell people to keep their event around 45 minutes, is that you've lost the majority of people at 37 minutes. So you want to get all your messaging. If it's an event with an ask, we want to get that in early, those types of things. And again, keep it short. Nobody wants to watch a 3-hour movie production of your content.
So in some of the research that I've read that was done in college classrooms, the number, we seem to have a variety of numbers here, was 15 to 20 minutes. And they did this really interestingly in 2 ways. So number one, they tested the students and they knew which questions had been presented after 15 or 20 minutes and before, and they could see that the students didn't remember the stuff after that. And they also did studies where they looked at the students' eyes, and they could just see whether the students were looking at the professor or looking somewhere else. So from both perspectives, they could see that after 15 to 20 minutes, that was the break. And it's probably a little bit longer when you're in a live classroom with somebody there, and maybe also when the students are going to get a grade. So that's a little bit of an incentive for them, as opposed to that 7 minutes might make more sense for something where they're not going to get graded and you're not in the same room with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right, because the research I've seen indicates that people's short-term memories have about a 20-minute fill rate. So at the 20-minute mark, people have now reached overwhelm, because your conscious mind can handle about 10 to 50 bits of information per second. Your subconscious mind can handle like 14 million bits. So for example, right now, your subconscious mind knows how your butt feels in the seat. How many of you are thinking about how your butt feels in the seat now? Yeah. Well, your subconscious mind. Yeah. It already had that information, but now it's surfaced. But the idea is that after 20 minutes, when you're doing any kind of program, once again, virtual or or in person, the idea is wrap it up. Wrap up that segment of whatever it is you're discussing, because people are done now. Their brains are done. So wrap it up. And when you do that, then you create space in their short-term memory for the next thing that you're going to talk about. So most stuff has, just as you were saying, Ellen, has a 20-minute expiration date on the amount of memory that you have in your short-term memory.
That makes so much sense. It's also one of the reasons we try to keep the show moving. So you're going to create little micro shows within your show. And normally every 5 to 10 minute ratio is when we're going to go from a gallery view, for example, to a single speaker. Then we're going to do a video clip. We're going to change the music. You create those types of production. There's a reason why the news shows, if you look every 5 to 10 minutes, there's something different and visually changing on the screen. So that's also a way to keep people engaged with your content for the duration.
I would say, though, that the news shows, they're putting something different on the screen about every second. And so that can get overwhelming, too. I remember watching some presidential election or something on CNN. It was just so overwhelming. I just went to C-SPAN. I just want it, not about it. I just want it.
Because the 7 scrollers and the graphics and
the moving, like the swirls in the background. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yep. Well, so I'm really gratified to hear all these details. I'm like, oh, my instincts are good. Like, I got this show where the format is roughly every 15 minutes we change topics and format. I'm actually running a summit, which always take a moment, or always take the opportunity to promote what you're doing. So I've got this summit coming up on April 4th, and the format of it is 20-minute speaker segments. But the real focus is on engagement. So we're not really going for volume necessarily in attendees, although I'd like to have more attendees. But it's really about making connections among the speakers, connections with the audience. And I think it also brings a point of, because you're talking about the different lengths of time, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to convey knowledge like a college class? Like, college class isn't trying to sell anything. It's just trying to dump knowledge, download knowledge to an audience. Whereas some events, including my event, The Great Experiment, there it is again. Some events are more about creating experience. And yes, you're going to learn things. There's going to be some knowledge there. But if you come out of that and you don't actually have any new knowledge, but you had a good time and maybe know a few more people, that's successful. For some things, I think it was before we went on the air, we were talking about the webinar where somebody gives 10 ways to boost your marketing, and people are going to come out of that and be like, whoa, that's too much. But then the end is, I've now taught you everything you need to know to do your own marketing. And you can totally just leave here and do it by yourself. You don't even need me. But if you want me to help you, I've got a $10,000 program. And then you're like, oh my God, I understood the words, but that was so much. I'm so overwhelmed. Please help me. If you're trying to create an overwhelmed state so that you can then solve the problem with the program, it's all about what you want to do. If you want to get people exhausted and overwhelmed, then rapid fire knowledge at them for 35 minutes. But if you go too long, then they're tired and they log out. So it's a lot about, do what you want to do. And that's going to give you knowing how it works. It's not necessarily a wrong way to do it. There's just a wrong way to get the result you want.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess that brings us to our next topic, which this would be, oh, I didn't write whose name is which. Hold on a second. Stand by. It is that one. Ellen, you're our next leader, and you are talking about partnering in various ways, not just affiliate marketing.
Right. So very often, if you see the word JV, many people, especially the world I come from, which is internet marketing, they think of it as just affiliate marketing. But there's so many other ways to partner with people. And again, it depends on your niche and your field, whether you're corporate or B2C or whatever. But I just wanted to talk about some different ways that you can work together with people. And one of the most obvious ones, and actually not used enough, is what I call a freebie swap. So you take your lead generation tool and you ask somebody else to recommend it to that person's list, and then vice versa. You just swap referrals. And it's a great way to grow your list with people who are interested in what you want. If they're not interested, they won't sign up. And it's free, and you can just do that over and over again with different people. Another nice thing is sort of what we're doing today, right? Is doing an event together. So whether it's a StreamYard type of thing, or some type of whether LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live or however you are streaming this, but doing events together, we're meeting each other in a sense, but then we're meeting the people who are watching or who will watch the recording. And so it's a great way for me, for example, to access to more people, and that applies to all of us as well. But another thing you can do, it doesn't have to be streaming, is interviewing each other. So it could be a podcast, but you can just interview somebody on Zoom and then put that on your blog. So that's what I do. I call it an unpodcast, and it's a way for me to meet potential partners. It's great for my viewers, my readers. They get great information. It's great for the people who are interviewed. They get exposure. But it's also a great way for me to meet people and get to know them better in the context of me giving something to them. I'm giving them exposure, and then what else could we do together? And so more speaking things, any type of speaking at web summits, will always be good. So what we're doing now, we're interviewing each other, podcasts, web summits, all of that. And then the final thing I wanted to mention was giveaways. So the first thing I need to do is explain that the word giveaway is used in two different ways, and they mean two different things. So if Procter & Gamble goes onto their Facebook page and says, we're doing a giveaway, and you sign up here, and it's like a sweepstakes, and the one person will get this, and the second person will give out 2 of this, and we'll give out 10 of whatever, that kind of thing. That's often called a giveaway. But the giveaway I'm talking about is a collaborative event where everybody who signs up gets whatever they want. And so you collect other contributors and you put them all together, and everybody promotes it. And so people register for it, and all of those registrants become part of your mailing list. And then people go through to the delivery page and they pick whichever one of the gifts from those contributors they want. And so the people who contribute, people chose them. There was a list of, let's say, 20 things on a page, but if they chose you, then they chose you. And so you get really good people on your list that way. So those are just the different types of partnering I wanted to talk about. Yeah,
and I love what you're sharing there, because so many times we just think of the affiliate, use my link and you'll get 20%. And I think that it's important to realize the difference between a light lift and a heavy lift. This is a pretty light lift. Like, come on my show and we'll talk, and you'll be exposed to some people, and it's low effort, low results. This is being on this show is probably not going to change your business, although you might make a connection that'd be valuable. But it's about the amount of time you spend on a one-on-one call, and you make some connections. But there's so many things you do where you can leverage things that aren't just sell my stuff for me. And it's building the audience. So has anyone else found things that are powerful collaborations beyond just sell my stuff and I'll give you a percentage, which is nothing wrong with that. But
I think what you've uncovered, Michael, is the power of just generous connection, sort of, not being in there to see what you can extract from the other person, but, looking at partnerships and collaborations and saying, hey, you want to get to X and I want to get to Z. Yeah, those are kind of close together. Maybe, we walk together for a while and we, draft off each other, almost like if you're in the, I think of bike riding and the peloton where you're like the line of bikes, maybe we sort of take turns leading and following in order to get there more efficiently. I think there's something interesting in what we're doing here around building and fostering deep networks of like-minded individuals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And as Ellen was talking, I was like, she's giving away all my secrets. They're not secrets, but like, why did I make this show? Because my podcast, my one-on-one podcast, I had to limit who's eligible to be on it so that I could kind of focus on, like, why should I listen to this podcast? Who's on it? Well, that narrowed down who could be on it. And in spite of that, I'm still, if you go, if I do send you the link, you're going to be booking in June. That's the earliest time I do an interview. Because still so many people wanted to be on it, but I don't like saying no to people because you can meet people through a podcast. So I said, well, let me make a podcast that's got 4 seats every week instead of 1 seat every week. And then I can meet more people. So, the real value of this is I get to meet the 4 of you. Lynn and Tom, we met because you're on here. Julie and Ellen, we met somewhere else, but for Lynn and Tom, I met you when you're here before. Lynn, I met you today. We made these connections here on the show. And really what we're doing is kind of like what we do in a virtual coffee anyway. We're sharing ideas and conversations. You guys are meeting each other. So there might be an introduction that I might or might not think to make, but you guys might, through the private chat, be like, hey, yeah, we should connect. And what's your email address? And it's creating those spaces for mutual value. And of course, when you're the one running it, then people are like, wow, look at him. He's running a podcast. To me, it's nothing it doesn't feel like much. But when I say I run 3 podcasts, some people are impressed by that. Like, you run 3 podcasts? Like, well, I guess I technically do.
That's a lot of content you're putting out there.
Mhm.
Yeah, you accrete
You
activity.
should be proud of that.
Yeah, we're impressed.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so I just put in the chat something to Lynn, because you just mentioned that we could connect people with each other. So Lynn, I have a client who teaches a course on influence, which is very similar to persuasion. I think there's a technical difference, but I don't know what it is. And asking if I could make an introduction. And so absolutely, as these little small group meetings are really, really valuable for finding different ways of making connections. So thank you, Michael.
And it's true. It's we were talking about negative thoughts before, and the whole thing is an abundance mindset of there's enough business out there for all of us, because not everybody should work with me. And so to have that belief and to know that when I encounter a situation and I'm not the right fit, that I can reach into my network and find somebody who is. That's what this stuff is all about too. It's adding value to our clients through our connections and believing, I'm not giving up something. I am giving an opportunity to somebody else, and it's karma. It's going to come back to me when I need it to. Something saying it's, saying goodbye to good so that you can get the great or the perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Ellen also raised another great point. Something I've realized, I've gotten more into the joint venture space, because now part of Networking Concierge, some people call that joint JV broker, because a large part of that's introducing that people for joint venture opportunities. And at the higher level of that space, there are people who their businesses, 6-7 figure businesses built around joint ventures and affiliates and whatnot, but that becomes very complex and involved. There's certain strategies and launches and this type of emails and this. And if you know what you're doing, it can be very powerful, because it's a machine and it's sharing audiences in a very powerful way. And I think a lot of people try to do that without actually studying it or not knowing how to study it. And so they kind of try to improvise. They try to build their own. Okay, airplanes have 2 wings and 2 little wings in the back and like a spinny thing in the front. So I think I can build that, right? I can make something that works almost as well. And when you try to do something that's complex and then do it on your own, you're going to be sitting there in like a bathtub with a fan on the front of it and 2 pieces of cardboard on the side. Whereas instead, if you say, well, I don't need 100 clients, I need 5 clients. So maybe we could just do a Facebook Live together on each other's audiences, or we could give away our freebies to each other's email lists, or, start simple. You don't need to be, you don't need to be Jay Abraham. You don't need to be JVIC. You don't need to be these big players. Now, if you do want to, as you get bigger, then that's when you work with JVIC. That's when you work with JVology, with some of these programs that will teach you how to do it at that higher level. But usually, like, you're hiring a VA or 2 to help execute some of these more advanced programs. You need to realize you don't have to be working at that level when your business is not at that level.
I wonder if there's a bit of a continuum on JV, where over here is the Wolf of Wall Street, lots of contracts, big ties, and this is super like formal. And then, all the way over here is the, hey, we're just friends who happen to be working together, and let's be in for the journey, and what happens. And obviously there's a lot of gradations from those 2 extremes, but it seems like, there's a lot of different ways you can skin the cat, as it were.
Well, one of the funny things about the word joint venture is that we mostly don't use it in its literal or original meaning, which was a joint venture, like the 2 of us create a product together, or the 2 of us create a webinar together. So a great way to grow your list is just to have 2 people or 3 people get on a webinar together, not selling anything, and then just each promote it to their list. And we're creating new knowledge together, kind of what we're doing now. We're creating new knowledge, but in this case, it would be more like on the same different angles on the same topic. So people came away with a body of knowledge on a topic, and you create so, and that's a true joint venture. Or writing a book together, for example, co-authoring a book. So those joint ventures, you can just split everything in half, or if you do it with 3 people, you split it in thirds, and they're not complicated. The affiliate commissions aren't involved at all, and they can be very effective.
We've done a few of those types of joint ventures through a traditional blog, the old-fashioned way, the written word. And those have been great, where we've partnered with streaming platforms and our end clients. So we did the production, the platform had the tech, and then the client had the content. And between the 3 parties, created a blog post that could be used by all 3. And that's, a really easy way to, if you have clients, to partner with them, because they're going to look good, you're going to look good, and any partners you use will look good as well.
That's a great idea. I think the other thing too is thinking about what level you're at. You're talking about Tom's continuum. What level you're at, because you saw that in venture capital entrepreneurship. Less now, because I think people are starting to figure out the nuances, but certainly more in the past 20 years, that people think a billion or bust. Like you're a $1 billion company or you failed. And if your company merely makes you a paltry $500,000 a year, well, might as well give up, loser. I got $500,000 a year in a small yacht, whatever. But a lot of people, especially coaches, heart-centered people who are there to help, if they can make $100,000 a year, that's where they need to be financially. Like they're in that place. And and so I think we see some of these, higher level joint ventures, they've got 100,000 emails. They make $500,000 in one webinar, and so that's what you hear, because that's what they're pitching. And that's great that they can do that. But for businesses that aren't at that level, if you do a joint venture and you get 25 new emails into your list, that brings you from 500 to 525. Well, for where you are, that's great. And I did a summit recently with 37 affiliates, supposedly. All of our speakers were supposed to promote. And I had one person, 1,000-person email list, second smallest in the entire event, was our number 5 promoter for the whole event, because it was a very engaged audience. She actually sent the emails out, which some of our partners didn't. So she actually sent the emails out. You could see the engagement there. And she didn't need to have 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 on her list. She had 1,000 on her list. It was a good, solid 1,000. So you don't necessarily need. Now, if your list is 20, then you should probably build up that asset. But if you got a few hundred, that's a good start, and that's a good place to be. And you can partner with other people who've got 200, 300, 400. And Ellen, I love that idea of the joint webinar. Actually, if I find time in my calendar, I may try to do that more, because if you're not focused, and that's what I'm doing with my summit. I'm not focused on. It's not a selling a high ticket thing summit. It's let's bring some people together, have some cool things happen, learn some stuff, make some connections. It's kind of this on steroids, really. But yeah, it doesn't have to be about you've got your $10,000 high ticket offer and you're going to sell 12 of them and make $100,000 and give out all these affiliate commissions. Those are great, but that may be above the level you're at right now. So yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is so important for so many people who aren't at that 6-figure in one day kind of level.
And it's true. The research on goal setting is pretty amazing. And one thing that's important that you kind of raised, Michael, is the idea that if you set your goals to the point where they don't feel achievable in your own brain, it actually disincents you. Mm-hmm. So if you don't actually believe you can reach the goal, then, oh, well, that's just too big. And then you don't do anything about it. So the whole idea about setting smaller, achievable goals to build that muscle. And once again, you already know, hey, you set a goal, you set it into your subconscious mind, which has 14 million bits of information per second that it's paying attention to. And your unconscious mind finds ways for you to reach that goal. So goal setting is great until you set the unrealistic ones. Then it actually shoots you in the foot.
Huge.
It's a great book called, it's by a husband and wife team, Leslie Patterson and Simon Marshall. She's a professional endurance athlete, and he's a athletic performance coach. And I think they calculated it, and like the exact proper percentage of challenge versus likelihood of success. I think they tested mountain bikers. They said it was like 80%. 80% likelihood. Like there is a small outside chance that you're going to crater and hit a tree or whatever, but enough to know that your brain that like, okay, you're not taking it too easy. There is a risk here, but you have a higher likelihood than not that you will make it through this event successfully, unscathed, whatever.
Nice.
Hey, thanks for feeding my data geekness, Tom.
I know we're geeking out on the neurobiology front here for sure.
So, Tom, we got a few minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about building sustainable and values-led brands.
Yeah, this maps nicely to what we've been talking about, actually. I was just thinking about, so I mentor a lot of early stage startups, and sustainable in my world means what does it look like to build something that will be true at 1 million, will be true at 5 million, will be true at 10, will be true at 100, and scales all the way up. Zappos was a really great example of this. You look at a brand that was always all about delivering happiness. Even up post-acquisition by Amazon, they're still staying true to that-ish. Everything Amazon brings into its orbit sort of becomes Amazon-ified, if you will. But I think there's something really interesting there about values-rooted brands, specifically when a company is at the very, very early incubating stages of just one or two individuals, and they stand for something. I always tell founders, no one gives a damn if you sell your company for 8 figures and go tool around the Mediterranean in your mega yacht. But if you want to bring something profoundly good to the world that the world wants, people will be beating down your door. Blogs will be beating down your door to write about you, talk about you, and it'll become a self-fulfilling cycle. And in the founder world, where like baby sea turtles, 1 in 100,000 goes on to become a viable entity, either public or private, they need all the success and everything going in their favor that they can get. So fundamentally, that's what values-rooted branded means for me. What is true? And I think you can do that at a startup. You can do that as an individual coach. What are the non-negotiables? What do you stand for? What are you all about? And what do you like to, how can you bring people into your orbit who stand for that? So Michael, you as an example, you stand for connection. Clearly, connection, human connection is a value for you. You prioritize your day. You put time after this. Lynn, insight, understanding the physiology of the brain, clearly in one of your values. Julie, same with you, connection, connection both through a screen or connection in person. Connection is connection, and I see community as a key value for you. Ellen, collaboration, overlapping, if there's a Venn diagram, you sit at the overlap of those two circles where it's like, okay, what does mutual benefit look like? How do we achieve something where everybody wins? So that's my shorthand for values matter when, in life and definitely in business as well.
So Tom, you just gave a great example of listening for understanding and empathy. Thank you for that.
In practice, there we go.
We bring it full circle.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. We're talking about like selling with values, and if you put out the right values, you'll attract the right people. But people have to know what you stand for, and I think a lot of people who are new in business, and I know I was one of them. You start chasing the dollar because you get bills to pay. And one of the smartest moves I made in my business was starting driving Uber, because I was chasing the buck. I'm like, I got to make money. Like, wait, I can just go drive Uber and DoorDash. I want to make money that way and stop worrying about how I'm going to make money in my business. And I then had the time to research and connect and just kind of do stuff and find stuff. And then when I found the niche, I'm like, here it is. And I didn't have 12 clients I had to get rid of. And I didn't have a bad reputation from that crappy program that I shoved on the market because I needed to make a buck. And but it's important to be able to focus on those values and find ways to get out of survival mode so you can present your values, and not your values are, I need to pay my mortgage. It's a bad value to lead with.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, soul and body need to be kept united. So we all have to make a buck, and that's totally, but obviously a lot has been put on values, under that bucket. But fundamentally, you can determine your values by what do you put your time into every day. I mean, I'm a dad. Do I genuinely value my kids? Well, if I'm, spending time with them and being in their lives and, supporting their education, clearly that I can safely say that's a value. If I'm not, and sometimes there's a disconnect between what you profess and what your time demonstrates. So this is where like time journaling is really good. What are you investing your time and energy into? Because that more or less is where your values lie.
All right. So we're going to go around the horn to get a final word from everyone. So we got about 5 minutes, give or take. So during your final word, if you have something you want to share, I have your websites you gave me. So if you have anything you want to share, downloads, freebies, whatever, feel free to mention that. If you don't, that's fine too. So we'll just go around clockwise. Anyway, Lynn, and around the circle. So Lynn, go ahead. Give us your final thoughts.
My final thought is you need to pay attention to your final thoughts, your thoughts throughout the course of the day. Now, most of your thoughts automatically default to negative. Change the way you think, because you create the world around you internally by what it is that you're thinking about. So believe that you're more persuasive. Understand that the idea is to convey information, not to convince anyone. Because by the time you're trying to convince people, you have already lost the war. So pay attention to the needs of the people that you're with. Maybe they're clients, maybe they aren't. Maybe they're your family members. Pay attention to what their needs are, listen well, and then play back what it is that you've heard. So people feel seen and heard and feel better connected with you. And then wait and frankly, never give advice. You can share the things that have worked for you, but pay attention to the needs of the people around you, and you will never sell and become that used car salesman a day in your life. You'll become a person who actually pays attention and gives them information they can use.
Love it. Next up, Julie.
Hi again. So I think my final thoughts is, if you are out there and you are realizing that you need to plan an in-person event, and oh shoot, now half your attendees are asking how they can join virtually. We love to talk to people just like you. Our website's down below. You always get to pick our brains. And if you work with us, great. And if you go and do it on your own, great. We just want better and more impactful events to be happening out there. So don't forget, keep it short, keep it concise, and you'll have a great and wonderful virtual event.
Over to Ellen.
So yes, definitely changetheworldmarketing.com. And if you put after that a /freebies, I'd love to have you pick up whatever it is that you think is relevant to your need right now. What I do is I help people get their knowledge out to the world with online products and courses. Would love to have a talk with you and see if that would make sense for us to work together.
Great. And Tom.
Awesome. Helloepigraph.com is where I'm at. Reach out on LinkedIn if you're listening to this and this is resonant. Fundamentally, we help build human brands, which would seem like every brand should be human, but there's a lot of dehumanization in business sometimes. So if that resonates, or if you just want to talk values and working through how you bring your life into alignment with what your dent in the universe is supposed to be, reach out. I always love having these types of conversations, and that's why I love sitting down with you, Michael. Thanks for bringing this group together. I really appreciate you and what you got going on here.
Thanks for joining us again. And I've got two things to share. One is if you go to my website, guywhoknowsaguy.com, which I don't have a banner ready for, weirdly enough. But trust me, it's guywhoknowsaguy.com, and you put your email address at the top. You will get the audio book of The Guy Who Knows a Guy, which is my book on networking. You get the ebook also if you like to read ebooks, but I found more people like audiobooks, so I recorded it. And I do have that summit coming up. It is April 4th. It is free to attend. There is a VIP upgrade if you want to get the recordings and all the cool stuff that everyone's throwing in there. in the bundle, but you will get the full event experience for free just by showing up and registering, because, as I said, it's really just the Power Lunch podcast just turned up to 11 and made a full day event when you get right down to it. So it's going to be pretty awesome. I encourage everyone to go. We do still have a couple of speaker spots left. Most of them are, I think we have like 1 or 2 speaker spots left. If people apply, they might get a spot, they might not. But you can certainly come and attend, and it'll be quite engaging whether you're on the stage or in the audience, because I'm trying to make an event that Julie will look at and say, yeah, that's a pretty good one. So that's a standard of going for. If Julie likes it, I know I did well. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Join us here at this time every week. That's 2 p.m. Eastern time. I have no idea. I think most of the country stays in alignment except for Arizona. That slides into, it slides out of Pacific and into Mountain or something like that next week. So, and the rest of you are elsewhere in the world. There's this great thing called timeanddate.com that has a time converter, which is really good for figuring that out. And I use it surprisingly often. You'd think I'd know how to do the math by now, but I obviously don't, since I invited the wrong week's candidate, the wrong week's guest this week. But that's a whole different story. I'm glad this worked. Yeah, for those of you who didn't hear the story, everyone who's on the screen was booked for March 18th. And I sent out the email saying, hey, here's the link for this Friday. Nobody said it was the wrong day until finally one of the March 11th guests said, hey, I haven't gotten the link yet. I was like, oh. So next week, we will have the March 11th guests who are able to make it for March 18th. But this all worked. And this event is brought to you by Serendipity and Chaos, which always works out somehow as long as you come into it with the right attitude. So thank you all for joining me. This has been fun as always. And as always, you're all welcome to reapply again and hop back in for a future episode coming back. So thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.